Once upon a time, on a high mountaintop, 3 little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to be when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars twinkling like diamonds above. "I want to hold a great treasure and be the most beautiful treasure chest in the whole world." The second little tree looked out at a small stream trickling by. "I want to be a strong sailing ship and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world." The third little tree looked down into the valley below. "I never want to leave this mountaintop. I want to grow so tall that when people stop and look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God." Many years passed, and the little trees grew very tall. One day, a woodcutter climbed the mountain. He looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful." With a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. Then the woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong." With a swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell. The third tree felt its heart sink when the woodcutter looked at its way. It stood straight and tall and pointed bravely to heaven. The woodcutter didn't say a word. With a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. The first tree was fashioned into a simple feed box for animals. The second tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat and was taken to a small lake. The third tree was dragged to a lumber yard and thrown into a pile of wood. Long years passed, and the 3 trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, starlight poured into the stable where the manger was being used. A young woman had just given birth to a baby boy, and she was looking for a place to lay him. "This manger is beautiful," said the woman. When she gently laid the child in the manger, the first tree knew that it was holding the greatest treasure in the world. Late one night, a man and his friends crowded into an old fishing boat. They quickly fell asleep, and the second tree quietly sailed away. Soon a swell arose on the lake. The second tree feared that it would not be strong enough to carry the men through the storm. But a young man stood up in their midst and commanded the storm to be silent, and it was still. In that moment, the second tree knew it was carrying the King of heaven and earth. One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when it was yanked from a woodpile. It was hastily made into a cross and put on the shoulders of a man who was forced to carry the cross to a mountaintop, where he was nailed to his crossbeam and was crucified. A storm arose, and the terror of God descended on that mountain in the form of an earthquake. The tree was filled with shame and sadness. 2 days later, on Sunday morning, the man who was crucified was resurrected and came back to life, just as he claimed he would. In that moment, God redeemed all that had gone so terribly wrong in the past, to include the dreams of those trees. For he had made the first tree beautiful again. He had made the second tree strong once more. And each time people looked upon the third tree, they raised their eyes toward heaven and thought of God.
Who am I that you are mindful of me, that you hear me when I call? Is it true that you are thinking of me, how you love me? It's a